Hey, hope everyone's doing well. Welcome to this week's live stream. I'm Samson Folk. Of course, joining you, I guess, technically after the Raptors defeat the Philadelphia 76ers, 115 to 107 in a game that featured, I think, 99 free throws. Pretty nuts, pretty insane. And a game that was, I think, extremely fun, extremely interesting from what the Raptors tried to do on the defensive side of the ball, which I will, since this isn't going up as a podcast because there's only, however much time between now and the Timberwolves game, this will just be, a live stream on YouTube. We will diagram some of what the Raptors did defensively and successfully against Tyrese Maxey, who shot like 6 of 23. The ball pressure that the Raptors have been preaching, we saw a lot more of it in this past game. It was a lot more successful against Maxey and Lowry and Caleb Martin and Kelly Oubre Jr. than it was against Darius Garland and Davion Mitchell. A lot of that has to do with the somewhat lack of a lob threat from the 76ers, more willingness to use gap help in the Raptors, and a much better performance from Yakob Poeltl, and a lot of gumption at the point of attack from Davion, from Jamal Shead, and from DJ Carton. And also Scottie Barnes and Jonathan Mogbo obviously figure into this in a very big way. I am Samson Folk. Of course. This is whatever the hell I'm doing right now. This is the live stream. And I'll be answering listener questions also at this. Nesta says, can I expense the cost of a whiteboard now to the network? Yeah, probably. But I'm on the last page of my little plays journal. So for anybody who's interested, there's like a decent portion of the Raptors playbook is in this journal. Actually, a lot of the plays they love to run are in here, and which is kind of a funny thing. And then on top of that, we have some defensive schemes. So the first thing I actually want to talk about, because there were questions that were asking about like how the Raptors performed better defensively, what was the key to changing that? And last night Darko talked about it in broad strokes. He talked about it in kind of a vague sense, but like, maintaining that intensity, making sure you meet guys at the level, but like meeting guys at the level looks different. So I'm going to put down the mic and we're going to hopefully chat. You can tell me if it sounds too distant, but we're going to make it work like this. So tell me, give me thumbs up in chat if that sounds good. I'm sure that sounds all right. I'll just project a little bit more. Obviously, the audio quality isn't going to be exactly the same, but I want to detail how the Raptors guarded Tyrese Maxey in the pick and roll. So here we go. 7 out of 10. Thank you, Joseph. You can hear me. Here is the first pick and roll they guarded in the game. So they played so high. They talked about, the most important guy is the guy at the point of attack. They want their pickup point to be much higher. It's not a high press like in soccer exactly, but they want to meet the ball much earlier. So the first pick and roll they ran, Davion Mitchell met Tyrese Maxey almost at half court, almost here at half court. The scale isn't exactly perfect, my apologies, but Yakob Poeltl was playing deep drop defense, and he was almost at the hash mark. The hash mark is like 35 feet away from the rim. Deep drop typically puts you about 17, 16 feet away from the rim, maybe even deeper, right? So they ended up playing the ball here, and Davion forces a pickup point for Tyrese. Tyrese goes to Andre Drummond. They initiate a dribble handoff, and then so none of that's working. Davion's ball pressure is good. Andre Drummond isn't getting anything on Yakob. Where do they go? They go over here. This is Grady Dick and Kyle Lowry. They think, okay, how can we win this possession? What do we get to do? Well, they bring Kyle over to screen for Tyrese Maxey so they can put Grady in the action. And Grady, they switch it. So Davion goes to Kyle. Grady goes on to Tyrese, and Tyrese drives the switch, drives middle. Davion is over here. He is too far in the gap. He's helping too far off, especially since they have help here as well. It's not on the diagram, but you get it. Davion comes too far in the gap. The ball goes to Kyle. He recovers out to Kyle. Kyle makes a pump fake, escape dribble, triple. Now, that's not the end of the world. Now, they gave up a 3, but it's not the end of the world. They wasted a ton of clock. They burned a lot of clock. They made the 76ers go to so many different options on the same play. That's what we love to see. Let me show you something that worked for the 76ers, and the Raptors had an adjustment, but the adjustment didn't work. So this is what's called an empty side pick and roll. And a lot of teams like to involve more players in the pick and roll because it creates more misdirection. The Spain pick and roll is a third player, a back screener. And that back screener over the course of Spain, as it's developed, has turned into a lot of ghosting. It's turned into the Spain leak. It's turned into Spain ghost. And there's so many different ways to initiate it. It looks a lot of different ways. And also Scottie's best pick and roll last year was the double drag, which includes a second screener as well. The Raptors like to shallow it out to drag guys out of the paint, manipulating more at the point of attack. This is good stuff, but when you have good players and you want to simplify, you go to an empty side. So this means 2-on-2, and you try and drag guys out of the paint on the other side with shooters. Caleb Martin, Kelly Oubre Jr., Kyle Lowry, whatever it is. So if it's Tyrese Maxey and Gershon Yabusele, which created the dunk out of this, you get the screen. There's no help available. The help has to come from the full other side of the court. When Chris Boucher was in the help position, he stayed here. Gershon Yabusele, they get the 2-on-2. If you get a pick and roll, if the guy plants the screen, it's a 2-on-1 pretty quickly, right? So Gershon Yabusele gets a run to the rim. Perfect. How this changed next time is what they did was they changed it from Chris Boucher being the low man. They turned Chris Boucher into the guy with his length to be the one who zones up the weak side. That means you find the middle point in between two players, two shooters, and I think it was Kelly Oubre Jr. and Caleb Martin at that point in time, and he stands in the middle so that the guy on ball, if he's going to pass it, has to make a decision. You have to beat the weak side zone. A lot of great passers do this very easily. Scottie Barnes does it in his sleep. He manipulates with his eyes, gets the weak side, the guy who's zoning up, to step the wrong way, zip to the other guy. However, this wasn't exactly great because Jamal Shead was the low man. And Jamal Shead is great. Jamal Shead is very, very active. He came over here. He met the ball. He nearly took a charge, but he wasn't in the perfect position. And so KJ Martin just kind of stepped through him and finished. But that is the goal of the empty side pick and roll, is to make sure that the lane is vacated. And it only works really well if you have shooters that guys can't cheat off of. But you want to simplify half the court into a 2-on-2 action. The best players love empty side pick and rolls. It simplifies, it lets them get to a lot of advantages. Now, let's talk about what worked for the Raptors, because the Raptors played that deep drop, and Tyrese Maxey hit 2 pull-up triples in the first quarter. He was able to hit these pull-up triples because Davion is playing tight defense. He's not going to go under a screen. If Yakob is playing deep drop, he's going to be able to dribble into a pull-up triple. He did. It's Tyrese Maxey. That's going to happen. So what the Raptors decided to do with Yakob Poeltl instead is, and they play Hedge, and we'll get to Scottie Barnes. So what they did with Yakob Poeltl instead is they had him play at the level. So this is an X. This is an X. This is an X. This represents Yakob at different places on the floor. This is where the screen is being set. This is where the screen is being set. This is where the screen is being set. If Yakob is over there, his job is no longer to drop. It's to step up to the level of the screen. It's to get parallel with Tyrese Maxey and try, instead of a straight line drive, to make him curve that drive. And there are other players around there that are in the gaps to help. They come off of their man and they get in the gap so that Tyrese is now facing 2 instead of facing basically nobody with the room to pull up. This completely changed the way that the Raptors were defending. I think Poeltl had an excellent game playing at the level of the screen. Now, the 76ers were injured. They don't have Embiid to short roll with. They don't have Paul George to punish second side actions. That matters. It matters a lot. But the Raptors weren't healthy either, right? So Yakob is stepping up. The Raptors, with Davion Mitchell, sometimes they even play ice defense. And ice means that Davion Mitchell is going to step in front of the screen and make sure that he pushes Tyrese down. And in a lot of cases, what teams will do if they're icing is called weaking, where you push the on-ball player to his weak hand. So Davion steps in front of the screen and makes sure that Tyrese is going downhill. What Yakob does is he steps with Tyrese all the way, makes him take a more rounded drive, and blocks him at the rim because it's his weak hand. He's not as strong on that side, and he's able to block him. It isn't a straight line drive. The curve drives are slower. They take longer. It's more distance. It's a great job by the Raptors and a really good job of Yakob Poeltl to make sure that he creates the lanes that Tyrese Maxey can take and takes away the lanes that he doesn't want. And it's tough for a big man like Poeltl to contain in the pick and roll, especially a Blur, one of the fastest players in the NBA, Tyrese Maxey. But it's a credit to Yakob for the foot speed to make sure that he wasn't fouling on ball, and a credit to the players who were providing gap help to make sure that Maxey had smaller lanes that he could go through. Now, something that I really enjoyed was Jamal Shead and Scottie Barnes teaming up for hedge and recover defense. So hedge and recover is an at the level type of defense, but basically what it employs is that if this is Tyrese Maxey and he's trying to take the screen to the left, and Jamal Shead is the player trailing him, climbing over the screen, Scottie Barnes, who's guarding Andre Drummond, Scottie Barnes will step up in front of Tyrese Maxey, and the best version of that is if you can get the guard, you blitz them and get them to kill their dribble, and then the trailing player is in the rearview mirror and contests the lane to the pass to the roller, so that this guy has to reset out to the side here. That's the number one option. Now, in the best players, they won't kill their dribble. That's not something you can get away with. But Tyrese Maxey, he keeps his dribble alive. Then Scottie, you step out. Jamal Shead is giving chase. Scottie recovers back to Andre Drummond. And it's all about taking away the lanes in motion and making sure that guys are seeing a lot of arms, a lot of bodies. That's what they were able to do. They reset, and Jamal is a little bit slower on this one. Scottie pops out. There's a window to AD, but since Scottie's such a damn good defender, Scottie pursues AD because he catches wider because Jamal covered a certain portion of the passing lane. Scottie recovers back and blocks AD at the rim. They played really good pick and roll defense. Now, are they going to be able to muster that up constantly all the time? I mean, tough to say. Tyrese Maxey plus Kyle Lowry and Caleb Martin and Kelly Oubre Jr. and Andre Drummond, and it's not a super impressive. It's not a super impressive offensive lineup, and they struggled to score for a reason. But I'm the view that teams win games, teams don't lose games. Like, focus on the winner a little bit more often. You know what I mean? And the Raptors, I thought their ball pressure was really good. Davion Mitchell's was the most impressive to me. The weaking of Tyrese Maxey was important. Meeting him so high up on the court and making sure that he kept the ball like in front of him so often. He did a much better job. That kind of stuff. It's hard to walk away from this game not being like impressed with Davion. Now, I mean, I have my reservations about Davion with some help side stuff, off ball defense, and just like, there's not a ton of stuff going on offensively. However, he's been pretty good through 2 games. He's giving the Raptors exactly what they expect, because Davion is a guy who, I mean, he got salary dumped, right? This isn't something like he's playing good basketball. He's not the answer at the point guard position, but he's playing good basketball. So I've been impressed. And so Robert Matei says, is RJ is playing tonight, ? When we talked to Darko yesterday, he said that RJ was making the trip to Minneapolis. They won't announce RJ is playing, I suspect, until 6 p.m. So we'll hear about it at 6 p.m., I think, because usually for the 7:30 game at 5:45, we hear about lineups from the coaches, but this one's game is at 8. So I guess 6:15 p.m. we'll probably hear whether RJ is playing or not. So, and then also Ryan K asks a good question saying, I don't know how we will be able to maintain this level or how we'll be able to maintain this defense when IQ and RJ get back. Who's going to pressure the ball handler? That is part of the consideration. Like, to my eye, DJ Carton is a better ball pressure defender than Immanuel Quickley is. Like DJ Carton put in a really good shift at the end of last game after Grady fouled out, after Davion fouled out, after everybody fouled out. Carton, he struggled offensively. He still has to find his comfort zone with taking shots at the NBA level. A lot of guards struggle with this. But defensively, I mean, he's quick. He gets into guys' jerseys. He climbs screens. He skirts them. He did an awesome job on Tyrese, to my eye. And so things will change with IQ coming back and RJ coming back, because Ochai, to me, is a better on-ball defender than RJ. And, I don't know if Ochai is in the starting lineup or if it's Grady. This becomes a lot easier to maintain defensively if Ochai replaces Grady, but I think you take losses on offense, because we talked about like empty side stuff, and we talked about how the 76ers tried to manipulate the Raptors defense with their spacing, and they had trouble sometimes. Grady is really important to that stuff on the other end. Ochai does not bring that same level. We'll talk about more about those guys later, but you get my meaning. And also, I forgot to say, like, Grady is not a good defender, but he competes. Like, he got a stop on Tyrese Maxey. Tyrese Maxey pulled up from 15 feet because he couldn't get by Grady's hips. Grady was in complete isolation, 25 feet from the basket. And since it was Kyle Lowry in the strong side corner, Jamal Shead provided no gap help. Grady Dick was on an island with Tyrese Maxey and got a stop. It's not going to be talked about a bunch, and I'm not going to try and tell you that Grady is a positive defender, but I think that Grady is not as bad a defender as it is conveyed often. He's not a positive. He's a negative, but he's not like destroying the defense every time he's out there. He pays attention to scheme. He knows where he's supposed to cheat. He struggles with some stuff, but the effort is there. It's not going to be like the other guys, but the effort is there. He's not tanking the defense as much as maybe it seems. I'm not sure. But he's still bad. Them's the breaks. It will be tough to maintain, but also on the other side is like, basketball, there's two sides of the floor, or it's all one floor. You know what I mean? Immanuel Quickley is a step up from Davion and Jamal, and we'll talk about Jamal in particular being quite impressive, honestly. Like we'll get to that. I think he's been like, it's been so much fun to watch Jamal succeed at the NBA level. And also like Davion is passable at the NBA level as far as like his all floor impact or whatever, like both sides of the court. But yeah, and RJ immediately elevates the offense in such a way that like he is completely singular on the roster. RJ, nobody does what RJ does on this roster. When he played like as a Raptor, he was their best driver. He was their best isolation player. He wasn't bad in the pick and roll. Like he just took everything that came his way and he scored out of it. And he scored in packed paints. Like the way that the Raptors couldn't even knife against the Cavaliers at all. Guess who would have done it? RJ. And RJ isn't the best player on this team, but he's the best at that. He's quicker than Scottie. He's better at attacking closeouts than Scottie is. His first step is faster. His finishing step, to finish off the glass is better. Now, he'll never be able to like step through a guy, boom, hit the shoulder, and then finish with a dunk. Like Scottie did that 3 times. This is the first basket of the game last night. It's extremely impressive, but they both have different strengths. Scottie has more strengths. I mean, he's the franchise player, but they're missing RJ. And while they are going to take a step down defensively, I think with RJ, I think he's just more of a positive player than he is negative in my mind. We can fret about what the defense might look like, but the effort was there. And if you had, told somebody that, Yakob Poeltl was going to be excellent at the, Yakob Poeltl was going to be excellent at the level of the screen against Tyrese Maxey, I probably would have been skeptical, but he was awesome last night. And like, even he was coaching Jonathan Mogbo through a coverage as they were covering it. So what was supposed to be a hedge and recover ended up being a blitz, and you can actually see Yakob Poeltl like wave at Mogbo like, hey, step up. Mogbo was trying to switch, and so he kind of like stepped out and then went to retreat, and Yakob was like, no, keep stepping up. You see him do it mid defensive action. So they both stepped up to the ball, and then after they like it's the mix between a hedge and a blitz because they miscommunicated. But it was a good defensive possession. And then also like when I believe it was Jamal is guarding Tyrese and they switch Mogbo out onto Tyrese, Mogbo just steps out on him, slides with him, and then Tyrese tries to take that shot and Mogbo times it perfectly, boom, blocks the 3-point shot. There's a difference in my mind between a sprinting, running closeout, the Chris Boucher block, and like sliding with a guy and then timing his pull perfectly and blocking him in isolation. The latter is tougher to me, I think. Jingpeng says, really hoping RJ takes the leap defensively. Agreed. Keir Doyle says, Nick Nurse's begrudging. Scottie was pretty good last night. Was so funny. I talked to Nick before the game, and it was in my piece, the quote. I'll see if I can pull it up, but because I asked I asked Nick about, hey, like you coached Scottie for a couple of years, and his last year was one where he had a lot of skeptics. Like year 2, Scottie got a lot of shit around the league, and like Adam Lascaris made it his business that like after every game he would ask the star player on the other team like, hey, what do you make of Scottie's second year? Just so those guys who obviously saw what Scottie had would, express their optimism. Jason Tatum was a really early one, right? He's like, nah, like he'll figure it out. Jason Tatum also had a disappointing season too in his career. But Nick was he was talking about the style of play that Scottie plays with, but he's like, I know he had a really tough night the other night in the opener. It seemed to me that he was really playing hard, but it was just one of those nights where the lid was on the basket for him. I wouldn't expect that to happen tonight in this one. Scottie shot like what, 63, 64%. I think that Nick, in the pregame conversation I had with him, it seemed like he was kind towards Scottie, but you never know how things are going to come across if it's like what the question was asked, if you're reading it from a tweet, if you're seeing it in the post game stuff. I mean, who knows, right? I feel like I should finally get to some listener questions. After we did like 15 minutes of just hardcore breaking. If anybody wants to learn about pick and roll defense, just watch, I guess, like the first 15 minutes of the podcast. It's pretty thorough, especially since like this isn't going out as a podcast. It'll just be on the YouTube. So because I worry about that sometimes when I'm breaking down plays, is like, well, if people are listening to this, do I do a good enough job of building out the court and saying what's happening directly? I was doing the pod in Cleveland, the Fox News Sports Bob Schmidt, and I was like, man, am what I saying, like, what does it make any sense? So I always worry about that. But since it's just video, I mean, hey, there we go. Also, I'm doing too much inside baseball talk right now. I mean, nobody really cares about it that much. Okay, so there were a lot of questions about Mogbo. We will talk about Mogbo because Mogbo, I think, is one of the, like, he was a co-star of a game. And this is after when Trey and myself and S, we did the awards draft where we have to keep picking Raptors players, what awards they could or accolades they could possibly get. And it's tough for a team that doesn't have high expectations. Like, yes, you could pick Scottie All-NBA. Yes, you could pick, Scottie All-Star. That's probably the number one lock, right? But I picked Jonathan Mogbo, second team rookie, because I was like, if he gets minutes, he will make plays. If he gets minutes, he will put up stats. If he gets minutes, like, he'll find a way. And lo and behold, the first game he got some minutes. It wasn't a good game in my estimation, but he put up stats. Last game, not only was he putting up a lot of stats, 5 stocks. Are you nuts? Are you insane? But he also, I thought, was genuinely quite good and really helped the Raptors in their strongest stretch of the game. That was so impressive to me. So there was a few people asked about Mogbo, and I just want to give them their credit. So Makai says, what do you think is Mogbo's most realistic path to consistent minutes as a rookie, being a small ball big or playing more of a wing role? Big fan of the show, by the way. Haha. Yeah, that's Kai being funny. Yes. And then also we have Oh, yeah. Spain PNR says, whilst I know the Raptors want to develop Mogbo as a wing, in Kelly's absence, do you think it's more beneficial for them to just play him at backup center and go to a switching scheme on 1-5 pick and rolls? He seemed pretty phenomenal, and maybe he could also play that role with Kelly on D. From Dad Gibson. Dan, not Dad Gibson. Dan Gibson. Any specific thoughts on Mogbo's defensive playmaking so far? Are teams just caught off guard by his brashness as a rookie, or is there a mix of attentiveness and athleticism that could result in a big-time stocks guy? And I think, from Andre, I hope I can word this properly. Raptors were playing Mogbo at the wing, even though he was a 4-5 in college, and yesterday he played small ball 5 and 4 again. Are they still trying to develop him as a wing, and should they lean to small ball 5 direction? And then Coach Roach says, do you think Mogbo will make the all-rookie second team? Okay, all Mogbo questions. I know this is not great listening, but if people are kind enough to ask me what I think about things, I do want to credit them. So, Mogbo, if you're if you listen to the podcast, you heard me talk about exactly what happened tonight in the summer. I talked I think I have a pretty good understanding of Mogbo's games, and I was predicting these struggles that he was showing. And I predicted, as soon as the Raptors play him more so as a big instead of a wing, he can play the big at the NBA level. It's just the 76ers were small for portions of last night's game, so it was particularly good for him. And he also played against Drummond and played him pretty well. And the Raptors also have Kelly Olynyk, who I don't know if they want to play him at the 4 or the 5. I don't know exactly what their plan is for when he comes back, but they looked at Mogbo, his size, and said, yeah, you can make it work as a big, but they're trying to swing a little bit higher here, and they want him to play as a wing. All of the timing, all of the intuitive stuff, everything that you're going to be asked to do changes from a wing to a big. All of your automatics, all of your reads, everything you're trying to do. Defensively, I mean, Mogbo, he's looked comfortable anywhere on the floor. That's what Spain Pick and Roll was talking about on Twitter, is he looks comfortable stepping out. Can't they just put him there and switch 1-5 pick and rolls, 1-4 pick and rolls? Certainly they could. He's looked quite good, be it preseason or be it the 2 games in the regular season so far, stepping out onto guys and containing in isolation. Once that starts getting turned into, big, small screens or something like that, if there's a team that's capable of making him kind of slither around screens, maybe it becomes less tenable and they try and play something more, I guess switching is really conservative. Once they try and play a different scheme with him, we'll see. We don't really have that tape yet. However, offensively, the thing, Darko was asked about it last night, and he said, and he reiterated to answer Andre's question, is well, how are they developing Mogbo? They're developing Mogbo as a wing. What he works on in practice will be wing adjacent stuff. What he works on when the team is healthy will be wing adjacent stuff, because they view that as the highest potential outcome. Because as was evidenced last night, Mogbo is very comfortable. And the reason why he got drafted, the reason why, Josh Codenera, best scout in the world, put Raptors Twitter on to Mogbo and said he liked him, is because he was the film is awesome in college. It's not the best conference he played in, but the film is awesome. He's a statistical darling as well. And you go and watch and you're like, oh, this makes so much sense. This guy can do that at the NBA. We'll see how well. And is it matchup proof? I don't think so, but he's a rookie. But it's pretty clear to me that you also want to develop those wing skills. His first made NBA basket, this is Darko was beaming, as he said it yesterday, was a 3-pointer after not making one in college, a single one, right? His first made NBA basket is a 3-pointer. And so you take Mogbo and he can step into that small ball stuff. He ran reads out of split action. He ran delay action. He can grab and push. He's a plus rebounder, very much so. His help side defense, I don't think it's been impressive, super impressive so far, but his foot speed to compete with driving wings and guards has been good enough so that he can be really interesting as a defensive wrinkle in coverages. He helps clean the glass, all that stuff. He walks onto an NBA court, he can do it. The finishing, Like, as good as he was last night, he was still 3 for 8 from the floor. He's still being asked to take shots that he's uncomfortable with, but it seems to me that Mogbo has a bunch of NBA skills. The Raptors know that, and yet he's being asked to do the things he can't yet do, and that is how you improve. For anybody doing anything in the world, that is how you improve. So I don't think this will. I think there will be some truly atrocious Mogbo games that we will see, and he will look unplayable at times because they're going to be thinking of him as like a wing, and he just does not have NBA wing skills yet. However, he is a talent. They're looking at him, they put their trust in him that he will develop. And if he doesn't develop, he has the small ball stuff. But being a small ball 5, that's not matchup proof. That's not like guaranteed you're in the rotation. You could lose your spot depending on the game. What Mogbo needs to become, and what I believe he can become, is a guy who fits into a rotation. And that means that if there's an opportunity to play small ball 5 or small ball 4, play it. If he has to fit in as a wing and be a guy who, like, yes, he hits standstill threes, cross your fingers on that one. But it's why the Raptors always ate the Cavaliers' lunch was when they had OG Anunoby. OG was able to impress a physicality upon the Cavaliers from the wing as a rebounder on both sides, as like a physical post-up presence, as a guy to bash and mash around, that the Cavaliers, despite being the better team, would always lose to the Raptors because of that physicality. Mogbo, ideally, and of course he's not OG, will be able to, yes, play small ball 5, small ball 4, but also be like a physical bash and crash wing who can hit some spot up threes. And like, he pushes in transition really well. I think his timing on his reads will get better as he gets used to the speed of the NBA and how people respond to him. I think all that stuff, that's in the potential. And if it all pans out, I think he becomes a very interesting, like an impactful wing. I think he becomes like such a cool player. And he's a cool player now, but he has a very specific role. And it's not every game that it's going to be Andre Drummond and Gershon Yabusele. It's not every game. Like, they play Gobert tonight, and they played the Cavs, right? And it's not exactly going to be that. I was also asked about how he fits with Kelly. Could he be? I think he fits wonderfully with Kelly. The reason why Ochai was such a good fit with Kelly Olynyk when they came over, and why so many of the high-low reads could have been made out of the split action, so many of the seals on screens could have been made, is like, Mogbo can do that immediately. I've made the comparison between Ochai and Mogbo quite a few times, that Mogbo can fit into a lot of what Ochai does offensively, not really defensively, but Ochai and how he succeeds operates as a great facsimile for things that Mogbo can do and win at. However, when they share the floor, Mogbo will be doing big man stuff, and he doesn't get to do the Ochai stuff. And when Mogbo is out in the, let's say, nominal Ochai role, there's not enough shooting on the floor, so he doesn't get a lot of opportunities to go towards the rim without a lot of help there, let's say. But it can work. That's a lot of Mogbo, but I feel like that's what it is. Yeah. AG says Ochai developing like a power forward and Mogbo developing like a wing. This is that's what I keep saying about when people make the Precious Mogbo thing. I was like, nah, Precious is a shooting guard in a big man's body, and Mogbo is a big in like a shooting guard or like small forward's body, like Ochai and Mogbo can do a lot of the same things. It's just Ochai is quicker. Ochai was an unbelievable 3-point shooter at Kansas, and it's not happening here. We will talk about Ochai though, because he's been good. Cavs game wasn't great, but he was really good last night, and I think in a way that people can believe it builds going forward. Like, I don't want to be too hard on him, but they share a lot of similarities. Let's talk Ochai then. Nesta says the Precious Mogbo comps are just lazy. The hair, the skin. Come on, people, let's be better than that. I agree. I think people think of it aesthetically, like just how they look, because they don't play similar at all. Like, Mogbo reads the floor rapidly, is like a plus passer, and he's not nearly as athletic. He's not nearly as strong as Precious. Like the differences are so stark between them that I think they're polar opposites, despite sharing somewhat similar bodies. Even so much so that like Precious is a 1 foot jumper and Mogbo is a 2 foot jumper. Like it's like they are different every step of the way. Let's talk about Ochai. Cosmo, I see the battle time. We will talk about Jameson Battle for sure. From Stevie, and there's quite a few. Okay, so Stevie asked about Ochai. Trey asked about Ochai. Let's see. We'll also talk about Jamal Shead, of course. Who else asked about Ochai? Let's see. So we have Trey. Stevie asked about Ochai. Maybe it wasn't that many people. Let's see. Dead air. What a thing. Actually, I'm going to take this opportunity to drink a little bit of water while I read. Because I have to drink too, you know. I got to take care of myself. Okay. Only 2 Ochai questions. All right. So, Ochai Agbaji. We will go for this. So, Trey asks, do you think Ochai slashing so far is sustainable? And also, Stevie, unbelievable meme bag from Stevie, deep as ever, at Raptor Shack says, Ochai has looked a lot better in his natural position with a guy like Scottie to play off of. With everyone healthy, what role do you see him playing? Could he be our Josh Hart dirty work guy? Really good questions. Also, Coco says, like the video. That's right. There's like 150 of you in here. That means there should be 150 likes on the video. It helps spread it to other people. It helps grow the show, the channel, all that good stuff. So I would appreciate it. Thank you very much. So is Ochai's cutting sustainable? I mean, like I'll just go, wait, let me poke around on Synergy quickly because that should be plenty interesting. But it is my view that Ochai's cutting is extremely sustainable because in the same way that you looked at RJ Barrett and how much trouble he had finishing with the New York Knicks, and then all of a sudden he's a plus finisher with the Raptors. In motion offenses, you have to use less dribbles to get to the spots on the floor. You're more under control when you go up to the rim. You don't have to time the pickup. You just catch and go. Like Ochai, it makes sense to me, quite frankly, that it makes sense to me that he would be a guy who finishes better within this Raptors offense. That is kind of that is my takeaway. And as far as Ochai goes, like there's a lot of transition stuff there, of course. And transition stuff you can't create on a whim. But as far as like your efficiency in transition, how you're able to score in transition, the willingness to run, I think that Ochai is a guy who's going to do that all the time. And he's finishing well in transition. He always fills the lane. He has a nose for the rim. I think he's done a really good job of getting himself there, right? So, you know, Ochai has made 3 shots in the half court this year. He's made 3 shots in transition. So, you know what? And he's 3 of 5 in both. And like, you know, this, if he can take half his shots in transition, which is a tough thing to guarantee, if he can take half his shots in transition, he will be very efficient, I think. Now in the half court, I mean, he cut well. All of his cutting, all of that stuff, I talked about this last year. It made sense, man. Like he was a great cutter last year. He was. He just didn't finish anything. He didn't finish at the rim. He didn't finish from the short mid-range. He missed all of his wide open threes. It's just like a complete struggle to finish the basketball. Lost Metropolis says Ochai has had some great finishes lately as well. He certainly has. Like this was immediately apparent. The first time we see them was at the open practice at McGill. Ochai made every layup. Every single one through contact and ones, different types of contact, both hands at the rim. Ochai made them all. And then during preseason, he was making all of his layups. You know, Lewis and I talked about this. If you make all your layups, I mean, you're a good player. And then I used the Pascal reference. Like when Pascal shot 9%, he went 9 of 51 or something like that during last season, the horrible stretch he had, and then it rubber banded. He had a really hot stretch from three. He still finished at like 34-35%. But when he was shooting like the worst 3-point shooter in the NBA, he was still efficient. His true shooting was still really good because he had shot like 93% in transition and just finished everything out there. So you can make your work easier by taking easy shots on the floor. And guess who doesn't need easy shots? Scottie Barnes. You know who are taking the hardest shots on this team? Scottie Barnes and Grady Dick so far. Grady Dick is being forced into very difficult shots. Like even the easy threes, if you shoot 50% on easy threes, it's a home run. And Grady, the shots he's being forced to take out of motion, the closeouts he's getting, like Grady's shot diet is the toughest on the Raptors right now. And you can see it in the efficiency. He's probably shooting like 2 for 5 on the easy threes, which is 40%. But it's just like, yeah, Nesta says Battle had a grenade thrown to him last night. Somehow makes it in the corner. The insane triple. I want to talk about his jump shot mechanics because Blake and I were sitting courtside just talking about how odd a jumper he has. And he really does. But regardless, Ochai making the work easy for yourself. I think Ochai does a really, really strong job of putting himself in positions to succeed. And the finishing has been better. So do I think that is sustainable? Yes, to Trey. And then also to Stevie's point, playing off of Scottie. I mean, if you're a willing cutter, you play off of Scottie Barnes, guess what? The ball will find you. He's one of the best passers in the league, particularly from a live dribble, particularly finding cutters because he's taller, so he has more direct routes. There doesn't have to be as much lob on the pass. It's just, boom, finding guys. And then to Stevie's point, do you see him playing? Could he be our Josh Hart dirty work guy? I mean, Josh Hart's number one elite skill is his rebounding and his transition play. Now, these are both very different than Ochai because Josh Hart is extremely strong as a dribbler, pushing the ball himself in transition. Ochai has been finishing plays as, the receiver, getting the ball. He's catching most of the time inside the 3-point arc and finishing then. That's a lot different than Josh Hart, who's going from like hash mark to rim. And like bodying guys and going up with both hands. Josh Hart is much better at rebounding. Josh Hart is much better at transition finishing and transition ball handling. And those two things really make Josh Hart stand out and allow him to add like plus impact in a few different ways that I don't think Ochai has access to. Ochai is not as physical as Josh Hart. Josh Hart is thick boy, very thick. However, I think Ochai, I know Josh Hart had like a hot, 8-game stretch shooting the 3 in the playoffs. He's passable for, stretches at a time. But, I think Ochai has a higher, Ochai proved he can shoot it. I don't know what's been going on with him, man, but it's easy to believe in guys coming back around, especially if they had it once. I think Ochai can shoot it in the future. And that helps him get more to that dirty work guy like Josh Hart. But it's just like, you know what? I'll tell you this. I think Ochai is a better defender than Josh Hart. I think Josh Hart is a really overrated defender because he rebounds. And when you're a guy who's like a plus rebounder, everyone thinks you, especially from the wing, everyone thinks you're just like an awesome defender. Josh Hart, in like the biggest stage, the playoffs, he got hunted quite often. He did not succeed and I covered as part of like, I don't know how to say Pacers media might be a bit strong, but like I covered one of the series, like he was overextended as a defender significantly. He struggled immensely. He was the weakest defender besides Brunson on the floor quite often. And Ochai, I think, is a stronger defender than Josh Hart. However, that rebounding, that transition finishing, and just like, man, Josh Hart, he gives like, he doesn't give a shit. He will shoot. He like mentality stuff. He's really strong there. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at on Ochai. We got like 12 minutes on Ochai. Hell yeah. Coco says, Samson, when you speak about Shead, I will repeat my observation from before. Okay, repeat the observation, please. I must have missed it. We will be talking Jamal Shead, and I will look for who asked about Shead. My guy, live by the 3. Of course, I want to encourage people now that I'm no longer doing the reaction podcast. Listen to my colleagues, William Luz. I will be on Hello and Welcome occasionally over the season, reacting to, wins and losses with Will. But Live by 3 podcast is a post-game podcast, is a reaction podcast hosted by Curly. That's my guy. That's the patron saint of basketball in Toronto. He asks, are you surprised at how effective Jamal Shead has been early? While not efficient on offense, he seems to have solidified himself as a role player, as the backup PG. Benefits of drafting a 4-year player, perhaps. We will talk about Shead for sure. Who else is asking about Shead? Nesta, I see you asked about Battle. We will talk about Battle after this. From Ian Finlayson, who writes for Raptors Republic, says, given Shead's performance so far, do you think there's a chance he ends up getting minimal 905 time and playing most of the season with the Raptors, similar to 2017 Pascal? How limiting will his lack of shooting be? Yeah, good question. We'll talk about Shead quite certainly. And then from LVR says, given Jamal Shead is possibly the greatest player to ever play the game of basketball, what besides his 3 should he be focusing on developing? I think he's a good playmaker, but he needs to clean up the turnovers. Regardless, Shead heads of the world unite. Yes, he certainly deserves this type of fanfare because he's a fun player, man. He gives his life to the game. You can see it. Also, we have some very kind. Jewel says, you and Will is one of my fave duos to listen to. Joseph Cassidy says, legendary duo. I'm glad. That's very nice to hear. And Coco says, last night there was a moment where I saw Jamal Shead and Kyle Lowry facing one another where it felt like Spider-Man pointing at Spider-Man meme. Yeah. There's definitely something there. There's that. I've talked about this tweet before, but there's that tweet that says that Fred VanVleet is is either Kobe Bryant or Michael Jordan for all guards under 6 feet. And it's true. Like, if you ask any guard who's small, what they think of Fred VanVleet, they're like, he's the man. That guy's the best and coolest guard of all time. And Kyle Lowry, while not as small as Fred, he doesn't get the exact same fanfare. But, I mean, Jamal Shead, there's so many similarities to how he plays to Kyle Lowry. And Kyle, like, Scottie got Lowry, man. Kyle got into his hips, got in there, started poking away at the ball, knocked it loose, got in front of him, flailed out. Scottie got the foul and the tech, and I was just like, damn, classic Kyle. Just like the most annoying guy ever. Like, if you played somebody like Kyle Lowry in pickup, the amount of groans, everyone would be like, oh my God, bro, please stop. What you're doing is criminal behavior on this court. And like, that's a really fun aspect of it. Jamal Shead, have I been surprised? Yes. The defense hasn't surprised me. I think like he was sold as, a prodigious defensive talent. That's how everybody talked about him. And even the defense, I think from how it was sold is like, oh, okay. It's like definitely a positive, but it's also like, oh, okay, this is good, but it's not like coming in and just blowing up every action, which is kind of how it was sold. But again, that's getting to the level of the NBA, all that kind of stuff. And it's also interesting to talk to like DJ and Jamal and Davion, who those 3 seem to be quite close and all take a significant amount of pride in being sticky at the point of attack, just blowing up actions, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, that's a super fun aspect of Jamal. But offensively, he's quicker than I thought. He's more comfortable with a live dribble in the lane than I would have expected. Davion is not comfortable with a live dribble in the lane. Emmanuel Quickley isn't that comfortable with a live dribble in the lane. DJ Carton is not very comfortable with a live dribble in the lane. He needs to, like that, he's picking up too early, and that's really hampering a lot of it. And it's because he doesn't want to navigate the middle. Hopefully that's something that develops for him. You know who's perfectly willing to navigate the middle? Jamal Shead. He will dip, duck, dodge, dart, and dodge everywhere he can in the middle. He will throw up a floater. He doesn't give a shit, man. He's like, yeah, I'll put the shot up. I don't care. I will like throw dribble into space, knife towards it, catch, be leaning the opposite way and jump the other way, push off balance. Like, it's not efficient basketball, but it's gumption. It's gumption, man. He brings the ruckus. It's hard not to swell with pride when you watch how he plays. He gets middle. He tries to make stuff happen. His pacing in the pick and roll is the best on the team. He runs the pick and roll, in my estimation, with the less skills he has as a scorer, Like, he has less skill as a scorer than Emmanuel Quickly. That much is known. But he runs the pick and roll better. Like, that's just what it is. The throw ahead, the skip step coming around the screen, always making sure his guy plants, and like the throw ahead and the skip step is so important because it freezes the drop defender and allows you to throw lobs, or it makes the drop defender stop their feet, and it creates the lane for the guy. If you make that pocket pass, it's no longer a guy who's opening his hips and, going and sliding with the guy who's catching the pocket pass. It's just like this guy's frozen with his feet square. You immediately go to the rim. Like, Shead, he's doing a pretty damn good job. Now, he has no mid-range jumper. He doesn't shoot the three well, and he's not like a home run finisher at the rim. This creates a situation where it's going to be difficult for this guy to score the ball. Like, it's going to be tough for him to score the ball. However, there's a lot of intangible stuff, and there's a lot of the in-between stuff that I find very intriguing from Jamal. And should any of those like skill things come around that allow him to elevate his scoring, I think like it could look pretty good for him. And the defense, I think, is a positive. He pays attention. He's not screwing up very often, although he does on occasion. He's attentive. Like, he's very willing to meet bodies on the floor, which not every NBA player is. Not everybody wants to get into the muck. He'll get into the muck. But yeah, his ability to like bounce into the lane is very fun. That's something like that. I mean, it's been kind of a joy to watch him try and make sense of how everything works. I'll take a break before I talk about Battle. So, an interesting question from Love at HWorld17. Is a tank 1 year and return to the playoffs the following year possible? So this, I think, is interesting because I know the Raptors, like Darko, has used the term rebuilding. Masai's used the term rebuilding. I believe this team is rebuilding. I do not think this team is tanking. Like, I really don't think this team is tanking. I don't think they're bad enough to tank. I think the playoffs next year is possible, but I don't think they're tanking this year. If somehow they end up tanking, I think injuries have forced their hand. But as far as like when the guys are playing, the team they have, the roster they have in front of them, they're not bad enough for that. So I understand they're using the term rebuilding, but I think there's a difference between rebuilding and tanking, because there's a lot of different ways you rebuild or can rebuild. But tanking, for the most part, looks like one way. You know what I mean? And I understand, like, OKC, they tanked, and they have Chet Holmgren, they have J-Dub, they have a million players that are like so impressive. But their best player and the guy who makes everything like interesting and possible, they got in a trade because Shea wasn't properly rated, and he immediately. You can go back to my coverage when I was doing Bouncing Around with Coach Evan Gualberto, and we would, break down all the sets of, different games, and we talk about a lot of the, talk about a lot of how the structure of like NBA defense and offense works. But we were so high on Shea. We were talking about him like, oh yeah, this guy is like going to be an MVP candidate and like win an MVP before he was an all-star. It was so clear to me, man. Shea is so special, but he's the most important. Like, Chet maybe gets into there, and Chet went second, and people weren't even that excited about Paolo and Chet. Like, people softened on that draft being elite the same way they're going to soften on the Cooper Flag draft being elite. The same way people have now softened on Scottie's draft. Like, it's going to happen, but I don't think the Raptors are tanking, Koki says, just because of how hard the schedule is, I could see the team pivoting to tanking depending on their early stretch. Yeah, their early stretch is like terrible. But I think like good luck. Even if you're like 3-13 or something, like 3-15, how do you get RJ Barrett and Scottie Barnes and Emmanuel Quickly and Yakob Poeltl and a starting lineup that's going to win a lot of minutes, I suspect? How do you just make them lose games? Like, the bench will lose minutes, I'm sure, but yeah, I think they're too good to tank. But I think the playoffs are doable next year. And this goes into Esfandiar Berhani asks, what kind of houses do you like? Modern/slick or old and rustic? And I said only brutalist architecture. And I'm saying this because I mentioned there's a lot of different ways to build. But so when I was in New Zealand, particularly in Auckland, which I came to learn that a lot of people in New Zealand don't like Auckland. New Zealand is kind of a country of people who I don't think they idolize city life. And it's like 30% of the country lives in Auckland, you know. My favorite city in New Zealand was Rotorua, though, which is where Steven Adams is from. He described it as it smells like someone's farting in your face all the time because there's so much sulfur deposits there. And it does smell like that, but you get accustomed to it, I think, after like 25 minutes. But the Maori culture there, and that's like the Maori city in New Zealand. It was so cool, man. And they also had like the Polynesian spas there, blew my mind. They have a redwood forest in Rotorua because they just like thought that because New Zealand, you can like plant anything there and it works. And so they just planted a huge redwood forest there. What a cool city. But Auckland's architecture, I thought was so cool because New Zealand's proximity to like China and Japan and the East means that there's a lot of that style of architecture there, and it's modern. And there's some that, when I was talking to people from New Zealand, they said it was because they had so many traveling students or international students who came from those places. So they wanted the apartment housing to look like that. So there's like this really interesting mix of like Victorian era stuff, classic English build, and the like Japanese and Chinese architecture. So I don't know what kind of houses I like, but whatever was happening in Auckland, I thought was like a really unique mix of all that different stuff. It was very, very cool. Also very, very cool, Jameson Battle. I like Jameson Battle, man. Um, Not as much as other people did. Like, admittedly, lower, we'll see how it all turns out, but we have potential for egg on my face, like Jameson Battle immediately coming in and giving you 12 points, hitting those threes. Like, one of the threes is easy, but a lot of them are like quick trigger. That one coming out of the corner was nuts. Mogbo taps the rebound. It goes to Battle. He immediately puts it up for an end one. Hell yeah, dude. He also fouled out in 14 minutes. 6 fouls, 14 minutes. That is pretty nuts. You don't see it often. It's usually from rookie big men. Like if Ulrich Shamshay came in, I feel like he'd foul out of every game in 14 minutes. You know what I mean? But I guess we'll see. Probably not that much of Ulrich, but we'll see him mostly at the 905 to be sure. Jameson Battle, it was what Lewis said. I think he shot 57% from three when we were doing the mailbag last week. It was just a continued excellence offensively. So, I mean, he just shoots the hell out of the basketball. I think he's a negative on defense. Grady is a negative on defense. Their best shooters are negatives on defense. I think that Battle is a negative on defense. I think that it's tough. People worry about like, well, where do we put RJ on the floor? Battle is like 3 times worse, man. Where do you put him on the floor? And it's just, but he shoots the ball so damn well. If you shoot the ball that well, you'll find spots on the floor, and it becomes quite easy. And you could see the correlation between a little bit more room to drive and Battle on the floor. Like NBA teams, you keep shooting the ball like this, and he looks like a shooter too. Like it is believable leaving his hand. It's easy to start like, okay, I don't want to be in the gap as much because the ball might go to Battle and he might cash a triple. And so that's kind of how it works out. Battle, I mean, just like impressive. The other aspects of his game, I'm like, I think he had 5 or 6 rebounds. Like the ball just fell to him, man. I don't think he's like an elite rebounder or anything, but one of the best skills you can have playing basketball in the whole world is shooting. If you shoot the 3-ball well or the mid-range shot well, you can play competitive-ish, like pick-up rec league basketball until you're like 60. Like you just catch the ball. You can hit a shot. You don't have to do a lot of work with it. If you can hit jumpers, guess what? You can play basketball. If you can hit jumpers really well relative to other NBA players, guess what? You can play. And he's bigger. Like he's bigger than Patty Mills. He's bigger than Bryn Forbes. He's bigger than Matt Thomas. He's bigger than a lot of the specialized shooters. It just, the release is easier because he has a slow release. He has a low dip. He has a hitch right in front of his face, and he's all wrist. Just he's a wrist shooter, like almost exclusively. Gets it in front of his face and just cocks the wrist back and releases from there. He's a very interesting jumper, although that happens with lefties all the time. That's something that everybody considers. Dave Krause says, after 2 games, why is Jameson Battle the greatest shooter ever, except on free throws, of course. Yeah. Shoot, man. You're going to have hot runs, and I hope this one goes forever. I hope it never rubber bands, but he was a good shooter. Like, he was expected to be a good shooter. And then this is the thing. He shot it at Summer League. He shot it at the open practice. He shot it in preseason. He shot it in his first 2 games. Just shooting the daggum thing. Yeah. From Top Shot Tesla, $5. Thank you very much. Damn, 1 episode on no dunks and S is already house hunting. Congrats on all the growth. Hoping the Nation Network is paying you that blackout curtain money. Yeah. Been very good with the Nation Network so far. It's been interesting to change the role, to do more writing, to do these live streams once a week now with you guys, and to do, like, I don't really know how often I'm doing it with Will. We don't really know exactly what that looks like, but the 2 we did I thought were fun, and I think Will and I have a good chemistry. So there's lots of potential to do fun stuff. So the change is like, whoa, anytime you go through change. And I did the reaction podcast for 6 years, but I'm happy with how things have looked, and I think they'll get better with time too. So yeah. Also, readers seem extremely happy with the output at Raptors Public right now, and the quality I still think remains super, super high. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to put that on screen. Top Shot Tesla says, Will and Samson, the Kyle and DeMar of Raptors media. That means one of us is perceived to be a little bit better than they are, and one of us is holding up everything and is underpaid, but is like a legend in their time. Like that's a funny situation. Anyway, what are we gonna talk about now? I think of it. Let's talk Minnesota. You guys want to talk Minnesota? Yeah, let's talk Minnesota. Who the hell guards Anthony Edwards? I talked about this with Trey. It's very, very oh wait, I see what you're saying, Top Shot Tesla. It's a joke. I'm not like the Kyle DeMar thing is a joke. We're at it anyway. Jokes, everybody. Guarding Anthony Edwards, I think, is going to be incredibly difficult. What Trey said was that he expected it to be like a game where maybe Davion comes in early for Emmanuel. Emmanuel didn't travel with the team to Minneapolis. Emmanuel is out. And Cosmo here says they're a terrible matchup for the Raptors on a back-to-back. Yeah. They're going to make the Raptors work. Like, you have to work very hard to stop Julius Randle and Anthony Edwards and Dante DiVincenzo and Rudy Gobert and Naz Reid. Like, they're going to throw a lot at you. The saving grace, perhaps, is that there was 99 free throws. So the game stopped constantly. And the fouls, it wasn't like there were the fouls where everybody's getting bashed to bits and you're just going to feel terrible afterwards. Like, it was just regular fouls, the tightest whistle you've ever seen, So maybe they'll have a little bit more energy. But, I mean, we will see. I mean, Anthony Edwards will be guarded by Davion Mitchell, I suspect. And unless, I mean, there's every chance. There's every chance that it's Scottie. And it depends on what they're doing on the backside. if they're planning to like plays to switch, if they're planning and switch and like be in the gaps and maybe give up corner threes from like McDaniels and I guess some one pass away threes to Dante DiVincenzo and Naz Reid. Like, I guess we'll see. But yeah, AG says Scottie has to guard Randall. No. Yeah, probably. Yeah, because Randall would just, oh my God, he would terrorize whoever if it wasn't Scottie. Yeah, so I think it goes like Davion on Ant, Grady on Conley, Scottie on Randall, Yak on Gobert. Who is going to guard? If RJ plays, that would be interesting. Who would RJ guard? What are we waiting to see? Let's see. RJ guards McDaniels, I think makes sense. Yeah. RJ guards McDaniels. Yeah. That's how I feel about it. Yeah. So Scottie on Randall, RJ on McDaniels, Yakob on Gobert, Grady on Conley, Davion on Edwards. They Coco says those matchups don't really sound too great for us. Yeah. They will be tough. Cosmo says Ochai on Ant. Yeah, you probably flip it if it's Ochai instead of RJ. Garanjan Singh says, I don't think RJ is playing though. Yeah, he was updated to questionable, but as I said before, I don't or here's the 159. What's the Raptors PR? Questionable, RJ Barrett, right AC joint sprain, out Bruce Brown, Kelly Olynyk, Emmanuel Quickly, Jacoby Walter. At 6:15, I think we will either get the playing for RJ, the probable, or the out. I don't think with this injury it's going to be like we'll see at game time. I think if he feels good in the shoot around and the warm up and everything feels good later in the day, then we'll see. I'm very glad to have said your name right. I hope to do that for everybody because it's your name, It's tough. It's going to be a tough game. The Timberwolves, they are a team that they will make you beat them. And I know that might sound a little bit like shock jock sports cliche stuff, but nope. They're going to play physical. They play defense. And especially going from, and I really liked Cat on that team. But if you want a guy who's going to punish you and bring physicality, Julius Randle is one of the top guys in the league. And I'm not saying Scottie and Julius are comparable, and I think Scottie has a much higher ceiling than Julius, but Julius has 2 10 and 5 seasons under his belt. Julius is really good. I think he's a very underrated player. And my God, he and Scottie are just two guys who will grind you into dust if you guard them. They will bring so much physicality to their matchup, and you will just be like, you'll be watching a guy have to guard them, and it's just like the shoulder to the chest, try and absorb, the pivot, the bump again, throw it up off the rim, push you away, go get their own glass, bump, dunk, and they both drive. There's a lot of he's big and he punishes you in the same way that Scottie does. And second night of a back-to-back, geez, the Raptors have to prepare themselves for that. And I tell you what, if the Raptors play this game close, I will be so impressed with this team. I will be so impressed with this team, man, because the Timberwolves are not a fun back-to-back team, especially when they're not on a back-to-back themselves. Nako the Nacho says, do you think the Wolves got better? No, I don't. I don't think the Wolves got better. I think that Cat is better for the defense than Julius Randle is. I think that they are more diverse in how they operate offensively now. But diversity is not all. Diversity isn't everything. And I think that Cat, even though he did disappoint, there was still a ceiling there as a player that he hadn't reached, and he didn't play at his normal level. I still think there's potential for I think the ideal, and you need an ideal run to win a championship in my mind. the ideal run with Cat is better than the ideal run with Randall. Now, the slog of the regular season, I mean, Randall is going to eat. He's going to make things a lot easier. And especially with Conley aging, the term is like Randall is a bit of an innings eater. That's why he was able to guide the Knicks to seasons that people were like, they have no business being here, and yet they're here. And you just look, and it's because Julius Randle's putting up ungodly numbers every night. He brings it. He doesn't care. He will go get his. Cat is not exactly that way, but the ideal run with Cat to me looks better than the ideal run with Randall. That being said, they're still a very good team. I expect them to be thickly in it, but I tell you what, OKC is going to win the championship this year. Oh, I want it bad. Coach Roach says DiVincenzo is also a key to their run with his outside shooting. Certainly. There was a play like where they doubled Ant and the ball went out to DiVincenzo and he was like 29 feet from the rim. Just put it up, cashed it. And I was just like, man, from the Kings, the Warriors, you see how he ended up in New York and they were just like, hey, can you shoot 10 threes a game? And he was like, yeah, and I will do it at a super high percentage and I will do it with reckless abandon and it'll be so awesome. And also DiVincenzo can like play make to the low man out of like empty side actions. He can run some pick and roll. Like he's a very capable player. The New York Knicks gassed him and got great return on that. And there you go. Like Dante he's come a long way in just a couple of years from being like the sexy Bucks guy, not like sexy in how he looks, he's just like the sexy, like, oh, this guy's doing everything. Like kind of how Brandon Pajamski is perceived on the Warriors right now. Dante was perceived, I think, quite similarly on the Bucks, and especially like good Bucks teams. Giannis is right in the heat of MVP runs, right? But Dante had to find his way to different things. And he found his way to like a really fun brand of basketball for himself. So, Koki says Randall's going to be tough to watch defensively, though. Agreed. That's why I think like Cat, there's a whole thing here about how certain NBA players get perceived. And Cat is one of the best examples of this. Is like if you project like more effeminate, people will just dislike you more. And if you project as portraying masculinity in its most liked way, people will like you more. This happens with, players all the time. And Cat projects as more effeminate. There's this stuff about his voice. And I think that's a response to that, right? It's not fair to him, but people think Cat is a bad defender because he's effeminate. They think he can't do things because he's effeminate. Like this is the motivation. This is the critique. So Cat brings a lot of stuff. There's like a super, like he's a very physical player, not exactly in the way that people think about it, but like he is a very physical guy. He doesn't look the way that people always want it to, but yeah, Cat, he gets a hard time because of how he, I guess, expresses himself, and also like the register of his voice. That's being perceived by the population en masse means that these types of bigotries, or maybe bigotry is a too strong a term, but these types of things, these oddities, show up. Nesta says Cat's ego has always rubbed me the wrong way. Skills are undeniable, though. I never thought of him as a big ego player. Maybe I never perceived that. Fowry and DeRosa says maybe 15-year-olds think this way. I don't think most people do. I got to tell you, my job is to observe the conversations and talk about basketball all the time. And so I see how fan bases discuss people. I don't think it's 15-year-old. I know a lot of grown men who do this, and I know a lot of women who reinforce this too. And Coco says, no, it's misogyny to equate feminine with weak. Yeah, of course. Bigotry is fine. Yeah. But yeah, so Nesta says, since high school, he has a bravado that I didn't gravitate towards. That's interesting. I have not perceived it. But we all see things different ways. Coach Roach says, I think Dallas and OKC will be in the Western Conference Finals. Clay on the Mavs looks fantastic. Yeah, there's a lot of hand wringing about like, oh, Clay looks like this, Clay looks like that. He had a couple bad shooting games, and then he had the one good game, and everyone was like, oh, this makes so much sense, actually. And yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Like I think the Mavs got better. And they also get to play Lively more. Lively looks really fun, really great. So yeah, it's been a good offseason for the Mavs. It's been a really good offseason for the Thunder. I think those are the teams. Although like Nuggets, Wolves, there's the top end of the West rocks, dude. It rocks so hard. So many fun teams. Those playoffs, I think, yeah, man, playoffs should be such a blast. But anything else about the Raptors heading into this game? Make sure to, I think I'm going to end the podcast. It's hour 15. Hour 15, that's enough, right? Jingpeng says Nuggets looking shaky. They do look a little shaky, you know? I'll answer this from Mel. I'm going to take a drink before I do, though. And then that'll be the last thing. There's some going on upstairs. I'll tell you that much. Mel says, the biggest question is what will the Raptors look like if everyone is healthy? So I think the Raptors, if everyone is healthy, are roughly a 500 team. I think they are an above average offense, and I think they are a bottom 10 defense. That is my interpretation of it. I think that neither RJ or Emmanuel will get all-star buzz this year. I think Scottie, if everyone's healthy, could get all NBA buzz. I think that doesn't mean that RJ and Emmanuel won't be like good. I think that Grady will have a lot of fans because he's a very popular player. And I think they will play very fun basketball. Bird says Scottie seemed banged up after that fall. What was your thoughts on that, seeing as your court? Well, no, Blake and I were courtside before the game, but the media seats are in the lower bowl. It was his knee. And it took him a long time. Like, it took him a long time to get up. But there was no, like, Darko didn't freak out about it on the bench. Nobody, they just crowded him and were like, are you good? And he limped for a while. Scottie is a guy, and this was part of, and probably, like, I talked about it. I don't think enough people talked about it in year 2 when Scottie was struggling, especially to start the year after coming off the Rookie of the Year campaign. He had an ankle thing that seemed to be lingering. Scottie is a guy who plays through injury, in my estimation. And he's a pretty tough guy. So I think he could be banged up. And I think Scottie is often banged up, but just plays through it. I think he has a fairly strong constitution for playing through injury. He's tough, very physical, you know? That's kind of, so he could be banged up, like his knee. Maybe his knee is not feeling that great, but he got up. He didn't look at the bench. He had no truck whatsoever with entertaining, like, hey, maybe I come out of the game. AG says it here. Him playing in that Philly series was insane. Yeah, Scottie, he plays through stuff. He really does. He broke his hand and he missed games, but he had to break that thing. The same break that I have. You can see the scar there. Smashed up those metacarpals. And yeah, that's kind of, Scottie's a tough guy. So he could be banged up, but he's playing. You also have to trust him in the team that, like, if a guy's playing well banged up, it's not in a way that can risk further injury. That whole bag of worms, can of worms, however the term is, whatever it is. Mel says looked like knee-to-knee contact. Yeah. Koki says, I just think Scottie is tired. Wasn't his kid just born? Yeah, his kid was born a couple weeks ago. And, I mean, he could be tired. Fred talked about that on, like, an open gym episode or something. Was like, I'm not even getting sleep. I'm hardly doing anything. I'm just being a dad. Because you know what? You know what's not as important as being a dad? Being an NBA player. Being a dad is more important. So, yeah, Nesta says no Clippers lawsuits needed here. That's correct. I'm not super into that yet. I'll wait till, it kind of like works its way farther up. But I will be interested to talk about that at some point. Also, just to hit this home again, because people tried to tell me it was like oh wait. So Top Shot Tesla donates $5. Thank you very much, Top Shot Tesla. says, quote, "Don't forget the light skin soft syndrome too for Cat. Tatum gets it as well. I appreciate that you have the awareness to speak on this stuff, Samson." Yeah, so there is that too. I watched actually a really good video. If anybody likes a guy named FD Signifier, he's a YouTuber, a video essayist, where he was talking about the intersection of like race, and he was talking about it between like light skin stuff like that. I'm not going to talk about that here. I'm not an authority on that. But I did watch a really good video, if you go to FD Signifier's channel on YouTube, where he was talking about how, you know, dark skinned men are perceived, light skinned men are perceived, all that kind of stuff, and how that affects women too. He's really great. Here's what I want to talk about. The lawsuit for the Raptors against the Knicks one. When that happened, and I was like, oh, so a guy shared a Synergy playlist and now they're saying they stole secrets? What? You know, like, what? I couldn't believe it. It was just like it was like a study in people falling for affirmative voice. You know, when you speak in affirmative tone and you can just like, you can just kind of say things that aren't true, but if you say it with enough confidence, it was just like the Knicks were like, yeah, with great malice of forethought, the Raptors stole everything from us. They made it sound like it was some insane thing. And then you read about it past the affirmative tone, and it's just like, oh, yeah, they're like, they stole 2,000 pieces of information from us. And then you realize it's just like a guy creating a playlist on Synergy and sharing that. This happens so often in the NBA. And like, again, New York doesn't own Synergy. A lot of my work that you guys see, guess where those clips come from? Synergy. Synergy is compiling clips from the end. Like, they have their deals or whatever, but like, I couldn't believe it. It was like everyone wanted to think that the Raptors were going to be jailed, tarred, feathered, and all that kind of stuff for what? Sharing a Synergy playlist, and that this was actually like stealing secrets. Are you nuts, man? Are you crazy? So anyway, and then obviously what happened was Dolan wanted to go outside of the league because he was like, hey, no, we won't get a fair trial here. And then they went, and then they're like, no, you need to figure this out within the league. And I'm pretty sure, like, yeah, nothing will happen with this. But like the way that people responded to were like, what were the Raptors stealing? It's like a clip of Jalen Brunson running a double drag, and the guy saying probably like, I think that you can put this guy here. Just imagine it's the Raptors, which, come on, crazy. Anyway, make sure to like the video before you get out of here. It's all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it helps spread the video afterwards. And then honestly, just enjoy the Timberwolves game and try and keep a positive mind for this, because I don't know if you can expect a win tonight. If they win, I mean, everybody's elated. Throw a party, man. Spin the chain, that whole thing. Like all that good stuff. But if they play it close, I mean, keep that one close to the heart too. I'm just hoping for a fun game. So yeah. Joseph Cassidy says, thanks for the pod. Let the boys run. Let's run. Okay. Like the video. I'll catch up with y'all, I guess, Thursday morning, probably. So yeah. All right. Thanks, everybody. Yeah, whether you got into this in the morning or at night, have a blessed day and goodbye.